Hello, everyone. Welcome. I would like to thank you for everyone who's joining us live and to those who'll be listening in afterwards. I'd also like to warmly welcome our speaker today, whom I'll be introducing shortly. Today, the FIP Working Group on Artificial Intelligence is excited to present the second workshop in our generative AI series focused on prompt engineering for pharmacists. I'm Whitley, and I will be our moderator. I'll be your moderator today. I am the chair of the FIP Artificial Intelligence Working Group and serve on the FIP Technology Advisory Group. I'm also an adjunct faculty at the University of Colorado Skaggs School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences and co-founder of the AI Collective and director at Pharmacy at Well, an AI-powered digital health and wellness platform. Please note that this event will be recorded and live streamed on FIP YouTube and will be available at events.fip.org. You can always go back and rewatch. To all those listening, please feel free to send all your questions through the Q&A box. So we'll be picking those up throughout the session today, and then we've set aside some time at the end to make sure that we can answer all your questions. Zoom also has a translation feature. So if you would like, you can follow along in another language. Please follow the directions here on the screen. So you can turn on the caption feature, enable translation, and then select your preferred language. In today's program, we are going to dive into the fundamentals and best practices for prompt engineering, as well as provide some live demos and examples. And at the end, we'll save room for questions. So again, please use the Q&A throughout the session, and we'll address those questions at the end. So at the end of this workshop, we want you to be able to walk away with the ability to explain the importance of prompt engineering in the effective use of LLMs, identify the advantages and limitations of well-crafted prompts, describe key principles and best practices for prompt engineering, compare and contrast the features and outputs of major LLMs, and recognize pharmacy-specific considerations when applying prompt engineering. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to quickly introduce the FIP Working Group on Artificial Intelligence. This group was founded as part of the FIP Technology Advisory Group with a mission to identify AI-related needs and opportunities for FIP members and to provide practical resources, guidance, and support in navigating AI-related challenges. So this group is chaired by myself and is composed of members and advisors with diverse experience and backgrounds, including our speaker here. We aim to help support FIP and its members in advancing pharmacy and advancing AI in pharmacy and healthcare. And so a key way that we do that is through developing practical resources. One of the major initiatives of this past year has been the creation of the AI Toolkit, which was designed to be a practical, easy to use resource to help pharmacists who are interested in integrating AI into practice, but who might not know where to begin. So this toolkit is meant to help bridge that gap. It provides an overview of important considerations when deploying AI, from an ethical and regulatory considerations to weighing the pros and cons of different AI models. And lastly, it also includes an implementation checklist. So if you haven't already, please check out this toolkit, and you can use the QR code below. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our fantastic speaker today, Dr. Claudia Ricken. Claudia is a pharmacist with a PhD in pharmacoepidemiology whose career spans community pharmacy and international leadership roles in Organon and Novartis. She's the founder and lecturer of the pioneering digital pharmaceutical care course for pharmacy students at Utrecht University and the leading author of the first and second editions of the best-selling book, Pharmaceutical Care in Digital Revolution. Claudia founded Pharmy, a Dutch scale-up delivering innovative digital pharmaceutical care solutions, and more recently launched Pharmavate, a boutique consultancy that accelerates hybrid care implementation in community pharmacies across Europe. She is also an active member of the FIP Technology Advisory Group and part of the Working Group on AI, contributing to the global dialogue on digital transformation of pharmacy. So Claudia, I will hand it over to you.
I'm sorry. Can you see my screen, Whitley?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much for the very nice introduction, Whitley. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone that is joining live, and hello for everybody who is joining later. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you some background information on prompt engineering, why it is important, what it is, and what we can do with it as pharmacists. Prompting like a pro, learning how to work with AI as a professional. That's basically the theme of the next hour. And Whitley already gave a bit of background. I'm a pharmacist, and although I have a data science background, I would like to also say that I'm not a math professor. In some cases in this presentation, a math professor might even be better capable of explaining the background of algorithms and AI, etc. So let's see what the questions in the Q&A are. But as said, I'm a pharmacist, and if they become too technical, we might want to, ask our network and give the answer later on. But we are going to look at how to use prompting in daily practice, and we will go into some examples as well. So let's start with a bit of a joke. Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds for people to understand the joke here, but this is a typical example of when you explain what you want to see in a wrong way, you might not get exactly the result that you would like to see. So taped to the wall, Margaret read the note. It's such a pity for Margaret, I think. If you look at the agenda that we are going to discuss today, is we are going to speak briefly what is a large language model. So we are going to speak about prompting within large language models, but first I will explain what are these models. Then why does it matter? What is the structure to prompt in an adequate way? And we will also have a number of mini demos. So we are going to look at ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Claude to see some differences when you put in the same prompt. We are also going to practice with the prompt, and we will have some interactive questionnaires or survey questions. So feel free to take your mobile phone. You'll get a code and an in-log at a certain point. Actually, it's the next slide. And let's see if it works, because I'm very curious of all the audience. I saw that we are with more than 300 people now. If you go to www.menti.com, you'll be asked a code. And if you give in this code, you only have to do it once during this webinar. You can answer whether you are already having experience with using large language models. And what is large language models? That's ChatGPT, that's Llama, that's Google Gemini, that's Grok, that's Mistral. So let's give it a couple of seconds for people to give an answer. I see that we have some experts already in the group as well. Very nice. Would be nice to hear during our Q&A your vision as well. And actually, I'm very happy to see that the technology works all over the world and people can give in their answers. Interesting to see that quite a number of people already have a lot of experience. And feel free to give in the chat box with what kind of models you do have experience. So the program, but maybe also if you are using imaging, if you're using it within the pharmacy, would be interesting for us as a working group on AI to know what the audience actually is working on or working with. Okay. Well, we don't have time to spend more. It's a sort of snapshot from 10% of the audience to see that, well, at least all of you, most of you do have experience already. And some have a little, but probably at the end of this presentation, you can start practicing and you'll have even more information and knowledge. And I guess that's what it's all about. Prompting is really you learn by doing. Today you will get structure, you will get guidance to make the outcome even better, but you learn it by doing it. So that's an important message of today. So basically, what is a large language model? First and foremost, a large language model is basically an AI system that understands and generates human language with a remarkable level of fluency, and it can come across to a certain extent human-like. That's why it's also called a chatbot. And if you interact with it in a adequate way, well, it's really a fluent discussion that you can have with the model. It achieves this way of communication by being trained on massive type of data. That's also why we, within this time frame, 2 years ago, the first large language models were entering the market and were having an uptake and adoption, which was extremely fast. But the reason that why we can use it now is, first of all, that we have fast computing systems, and second of all, that we have massive data to which they can use, which they can be trained upon. And then you have to think about training data of scientific papers, online forums, social media, Wikipedia, books. It's just a very, very broad trillion parameters based, knowledge based. And the crucial point here is that a large language model does not have knowledge itself. It works by pattern recognition. So it doesn't actually think in a way that a human does. It works by recognizing incredibly complex patterns very fast in the language that it was trained on. And this gives a sort of philosophical question, which is worth exploring, as it is just a guess that you get as an outcome, and the output is basically never consistent. Although by adequate prompting, the consistency level may go up, and I will explain a bit later on that, because that's what we call as hallucination. But it is, well, basically a model that just is the best guess and is definitely not the truth. And basically that is the fourth topic. It's based on probability. It chooses the highest likelihood. So this four elements determine the core strengths, because these LLMs are so good at pattern recognition. They excel basically in tasks like structuring unstructured information much faster than we as humans do, comparing complex concepts, and synthesizing diverse ideas into fast, clear, and most of the time meaningful summaries. So basically, that's the basic information that you need to know about an LLM. And I will not have time to explain all the different models there are in the world. But within the language that I can understand, of course, I am not able to read Chinese or some other languages where you can have local large language models as well. But the leading broader English-based English available models are ChatGPT, as you may know, Claude, Grok, DeepSeek, Gemini. In Europe, you have Mistral added to that, and Perplexity, which is a combination of some of them. And these models, these products, I should call it, all have different models. So if you are experienced to work with them, you know that they have a light model where you can put in a simple question and you get a fast answer. In the past, you could often choose between a light and a DeepSeek model. A DeepSeek or a deep search model is a model where it uses more data, more reasoning, it takes more time and also energy to come up with a good output. Those models usually are into the paid version, and those give better answers in case of complex questions when you want to do a deep analysis, a research study, make a report, a competitive analysis. Then it uses the more deep search model. And then most of the models in the meantime have an image generator where you can put in your vision of how an image should look like. and it gives back the visual representation of the prompt that you put in. And some of the models also help you with educational programs, making educational programs, and coding and software support. And they all have their own unique selling points, so to say, those models. So we don't have time to explain how we did it, but at the University of Utrecht, we did a comparison between 5 large language models and 5 pharmacists. We let them answer a number of relatively simple pharmaceutical questions, and we rated them on the basis of content and the basis of empathy. And in this joint rating, in May this year, the pharmacist had an equal level of empathy, no, an equal level of content than the large language models, but their empathy was slightly better. This in October has changed a bit because these models in empathy also get better. So they don't know the context, and that's on the context where the situation is questioned in. So that's the big advantage of a pharmacist. He or she, the pharmacist, knows what is the entire context of the patient. But if you go to purely pharmaceutical question, many of these models can give an adequate answer in an empathic way. And Google Gemini in our research was the best, but that's very specific to the questions that we ask. But it is a very nice activity that you might want to undertake just to compare a couple of these models on based of a number of pharmaceutical questions. So your large language model basically is a co-pilot in your work. It can serve as a powerful assistant that can augment but never replace the human expertise. The human also always needs to be in the loop. They can help with information retrieval, documentation, and analysis, as I said. But the healthcare professional, being you, the pharmacist, remains the ultimate responsibility for patient safety and clinical decisions. So it's not just a tool. The power is in the hands of the user, and then it can really augment your work. And how it does that, let's deep dive a bit more on that. If you look at the wording prompt in the traditional definition, a prompt means a cue or a reminder or something that triggers memory or action. That was the traditional definition of a prompt. Now that we entered the AI era, a prompt becomes the precise instruction or question you give to an AI system to generate a useful output, an output that you can actually do something with. So bad prompts give bad outputs and reduce your efficiency, and good prompts may boost the efficiency and your pharmaceutical care role. And for us as pharmacists, leveraging AI and prompts for tasks like drug discovery, protocol analysis, or patient safety requires this precision, because you want to at least have an output that you can easily review, and then you achieve better results. So basically, the core principle is that a prompt is a bridge between the human intent, which is in your head, and the machine capability to gather data and information in a structured and efficient way. Prompts sometimes go wrong, and that's the most important reason why we give this webinar. If you ask a prompt and you don't have a lot of time, or you don't know exactly how to prompt, and you just say something like, make it better or do the thing, it means that, or it will not give an adequate output. Because basically your large language model is an intern that just started the first day at work. It doesn't know anything. It doesn't know anything about the background while you're asking the question. So you need to give it tips and tricks and explain the situation in order to give an adequate output. Those are a couple of examples of how it doesn't work if you have an ambiguous or you have a prompt with ambiguity, or if you just say write something about drugs, it just doesn't know what you're speaking about. So what is then prompt engineering? Basically, prompt engineering is the practice of designing and refining input instructions. So it means that you learn to speak the AI language. And it guides the behavior and the output of the AI systems towards a by you defined desired goal. And there are a number of skills that are combined here. First, it's the wording and the formatting. How you ask your question matters a lot, which you will see in the next slide. Accuracy and relevance is important. And you need to also think about, and you need to be creative for that, how your output needs to be. So you need to sort of visualize how the output that you are going to use you would like to look like. And we will have a couple of examples later on that as well. So if you want to prompt like a pro, there are 7 crucial aspects, and we will go through all these 7 aspects within this webinar. You need to be clear and specific. The context matters. It's important that you describe a role, although I will also say something about the role instruction, which is a bit changing when the models are getting more sophisticated. They evolve, they are getting better. The output format is important. The limitations and how you ask, so what is asked and what should not be asked is very important. You shouldn't ask too much at once. It's just like a human. If you fire 20 questions at once, you will probably not get the answer that you would like to have. And systems have bias, and systems can be well, unsafe with regard to data sharing. And that's an awareness that you need to have as well. So if you go to, or if we would visualize it in a nice picture, which of course is also, oh, I'm sorry, is also made with a large language model. The comics shows what happens when your prompt isn't clear enough. It's a pharmacist asking for drug interactions. The system completely explodes, and the computer thinks, well, a computer doesn't think, but it reacts as, what is this? And then if you it needs to be can be used in PowerPoint, list top 5 interactions that can be used. You give a nice, you get a nice list, and then it works. So let's go to the first important topic: clarity and specificity. Specificity. That's really a golden rule in prompt engineer. The clearer you are, the smarter your AI becomes. And we often assume that the model knows what you mean, like we already said, but it doesn't. So you can't say summarize or explain, but you need to tell exactly how and for whom you're explaining something. For example, if you want to have some background on antibiotics for patient information leaflet, it is not enough to say explain antibiotics. No, you need to say, I would like to have a 100-word summarize how an antibiotic like penicillin works against a certain form of bacteria. It needs to be layman's terms because it's for a patient leaflet, and you can also add that it's in Word or in PDF or in an infographic. So make it clear and make it specific, because the intern does not know what you mean if you say explain antibiotics. That's basically the first rule. The second rule is context, as I already previously said. And within the context, you need to provide relevant background information. So what's your target audience, but also is it a community pharmacy? Is the hospital pharmacist? What would you like to understand? And we are going to go to an example here. And also, what does the model need to check? If you want to have certain resources used, like scientific literature or national guidelines, You need to give them in the context, because the model doesn't know itself that it needs to look at the national diabetes guidelines, or that it needs to combine information from the patient association and the pharmacist association, just as an example. So you need to describe the context in a very adequate way. And if you don't do that, and this is a non-pharmaceutical example, but it's a funny one, I think. You could ask, there is an auction, there is a house to be won. You won the house, and the price that you agreed upon was 250,000 US dollar. Well, then you get a contract, and if you're a bit lazy, maybe you ask ChatGPT, review the contract whether it's correct and legal from a legal point of view. And then, or this from a sales point of view. And then ChatGPT says, yes, I reviewed it and I found no unusual legal terms. But if you're not then in the loop, it seems that there is a mistake in the contract and you really need to check the contract yourself, or you need to give in, of course, in the prompt, the context check only on, not only on sales terminal and legal terminology, but also check whether the conditions were okay. So it's very important to think, what would you let, or would you have the large language model check upon? Another example would be if you make images, where context matter as much as in textual form. And here you see Gemini Pro and ChatGPT. Those are paid version. The first level of paid versions. And in the first one, we asked generate a picture of a pill. Well, it's interesting that ChatGPT came out with a capsule, and apparently thinks that this is a pill. But then if you give a more contextualized image prompt, generate a professional photo of a white oval tablet on a clean medical surface with soft lighting, suitable for patient education materials about diabetes, then you get this as an output. I think this is even, well, a bit more contextual. On the other side, you can't see that this has something to do with diabetes. And here it's a bit, questionable how it has interpreted suitable for patient education materials, because it's, really a clean medical surface. That's definitely true. And it has this white oval tablet with a breaking part into it. Most of the time this goes well, but I put hopefully into the slide because sometimes it comes out with very, very strange things. So, but most of the time it's consistent, giving with a more context a good output. Just as an example of image generation. Then we go to the third part, the role instruction. The role instruction is an important to describe from which perspective you would want to have the computer formulate the answer. And there are many roles within a pharmacy which you can describe. It can be a clinical, it can be the logistic role, and it helps if you start mentioning within the prompt, act like a clinical pharmacologist, or act like a logistic expert, because that sharpens the focus and the tone, and making the outputs even more relevant to certain contexts. I have to put a bit of a disclaimer here, because I this weekend heard a podcast. It was about prompt engineering, and there was a debate about whether role instruction is very important, like it used to be in the past. Within the new models, it is to a certain extent less important for very factual roles, because the studies didn't see a difference in output for very factual or very more systematic roles, whereas roles where there is an interpersonal aspect within the role, with a communication, etc., there it makes sense to add in the role, because then it takes different also empathy points into account. So while the models evolve, some of the elements, the 7 elements, become sometimes a bit more and sometimes a bit less critical relevant. But in general, role instruction still is important. There are, if you go to the web, you can find all kinds of cheat sheet on type of roles. This is a generic one where you see some examples as CEO or journalist or ghostwriter, many roles. And Whitley and I also made a cheat list for pharmacists, and these are a number of, and there are 33, I think, in total. But these are roles that an AI can take to give you an answer, just as an idea, just as an example of how you can ask a large language model a question and what would be the output of such a role. Just as an example, how you can deal with your prompt when you have certain questions on ethics, on care, on policies which you want to develop. Add it in the prompt, and you get an output in a way that a quality manager, for example, usually speaks to the external world. The fourth element of prompt engineering, which is important, is the output. That sounds like a quite logical one. And it just means that you need to formulate within the prompt whether you want to have a bullet list, an article, a table, an email draft, a formal report, an Excel sheet, well, whatever you can think about. And here I can give another practical advice. If you want to have your prompt helping you with drafting emails, it makes sense to train your LLM in what does your best outcome look like. So take 2 or 3 examples of emails that have a tone of voice and a structure that you think is the way that you want the model to draft emails, and just give it into the model mentioning, I have this letter from a doctor. I want to translate it into an email for a patient. Please use these 3 examples, which you can upload or add in the prompt, as how I would like to have my emails sent. And then it takes your ideal email or your ideal letter format, whatever, or it could also be in standard operating procedure. It takes that as a best practice, and then comes up with an output that follows the structure within the best practice. And if you have a paid version of a large language model, you can give that into the memory of the large language model, and then it will recall it every time that you ask a question. It will always recall, this is how my owner wants to have the output formulated. And that's really well, handy, because this is how you train your model to help you in the most efficient way. It's really your assistant then. In between the second and or the first and the second part of the presentation, I would like to now show you a bit of a funny thing where we are going to look at the difference between ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude when giving in a prompt for making a 6-panel comic strip in a clean and professional way. It needs to be in a humorous style. And let's see what is the difference between the... I need to go out here. Let's see what is the difference when you give this into 3 different models. Let's start with Claude. How can I help you today? This is not so preferred. I do it like this because the output is some what better if you put it into Word first, because otherwise it sees it as a picture, and that is sometimes causing an issue. So now you can see that that I've put in the prompt. Let's first put it into Claude. It takes a bit of time, so I'll go to the next one and put it into ChatGPT. And let's go to the next one. I put it into Gemini. I forgot one thing. This one immediately recognizes ChatGPT that it has to make an image out of it. This one also recognized it. And what is nice of Claude is that it always gives the programming, so you can completely follow how the coding is done to come up with a type of comic that we formulated. That's quite unique for Claude. You can add that as a wish to ChatGPT as well, but as you can see, I don't have that. And then there is Gemini, which immediately recognized it as well. First of all, I think it's strange that if you ask for a 6-panel comic, it comes up with 7 panels. So that's a bit of a hallucination. Let's see if I can get it a bit better. Tell me about drug interactions. It came up with an incorrect result. Then it gave in a better prompt. Unfortunately, it's not really readable, but it came out with a list of 5 drug interactions, which actually are not really interactions of simvastatin, I think. But the comic needs to show that computer and pharmacist can work together. And I think that, well, that result is to a certain extent reached. That's what Gemini makes out of it. Well, I would not be happy with it, and I would start over again and describing how to optimize the prompt. And iteration is a very important part in prompting. We have now asked too many things at once. In the next slide, we will see how you can solve that. This is what ChatGPT made out of it. It's already, I think, much better. Tell me about drug interactions. Too vague prompt. It didn't came out well. Let's fix the prompt. Give a better prompting. Then there is a table. Better prompts, better care. To be honest, I think ChatGPT understood us this time quite well. Also reflecting that this was not good and this was a right one. And then let's see what Claude gave out of it. Well, Claude is not so fast. And Claude always comes up with something that, well, to me is not really usable. Actually, it is not extremely bad because it says, a character that is not happy. Let's fix the prompt. And basically this, I think it does well because here the input is much more reliable. It seems that it actually has read the patient leaflet. And it followed the rules, but it has its own interpretation. So what I wanted to show you is that different tools, different outputs, and definitely if the output is not first time right, and I'll go back now to the presentation, you need to start with improving the prompt. Just a moment. That's the iteration part. There is one element in between. That's the constraint and tone. If you put in the prompt and, for example, you want to make a patient leaflet, it's important to add information for the AI, how you would want to have your email or your letter or your presentation, in which tone do you want to have it developed. It can be professional, it can be warm, it can be empathic, it can be conversational, it can be neutral. But the better you specify how you would like the output to be phrased, the better it fits with the needs. probably you want to have a different tone if you send a letter to your colleague GP, general practitioner, versus whether you want to write an email for a patient that needs some information. Definitely the literacy level might be different, but also the tone might be different, and you can specify that. This one I'm going to switch because we do not have so much time and I would like to leave some time for questions. But let's go to this iteration and feedback. If you think about our comic that we made together, the initial prompt was not so good. And in all cases, and a way to prevent that the output is not as you have expected it is to split the actions into different elements. So in that case, it would have been that you start with, I want to make a comic. Let's go start with the first picture. It needs to visualize X and Y, and then it makes the first picture. You can do that iteratively for 6 pictures, and at the end you ask, consolidate the 6 pictures into one comic, and usually that goes quite well. It's also similar if you, for example, make a medication management plan for a patient. You want to make a medication management plan. If you immediately want to ask, do the interaction check, write it in the adequate tone, make an email out of it, give a plan. If you put that all into one prompt, and we are going to see later in this presentation a very, very complex prompt, and you don't have to think about that always yourself because there are prompt libraries available. But in general, it helps to break up the entire prompt into smaller parts and then ask the large language model for confirmation that they build first a part of what you want to achieve, and then you ask or you put into the prompt, confirm that let me confirm that that the language model did the right thing, and then it will do the first part, and it will say, are you happy with the result? And you can say, well, I'm not happy, but I would like to change X and Y. The model change it, and then it asks again, do you want me to continue? And thus you go through the process of building up the complex tool that you have. And definitely if you want to develop a SWOT analysis or a competitive report or the more complex documentation that you want to develop with help of a large language model, the better it is to do it in a staggered consecutive way. In this case, we have an example of a scientific article about GLP-1 agonist, but yeah, you can imagine also with the example of the comic in mind how that would work. And we are pharmacists, we think analytically, and I think that may help to think in a structured way. And also, if you're not sure about how you need to iterate iterate the prompt parts, you can also ask the model, help me to formulate which steps do you need to come to an adequate result. And then the prompt will give you, or the large language model will give you a help, so an overview of steps it will take, and then you can say yes or no, or you can adjust it to a certain extent. And yeah, that helps as well. Also, feedback is very important because you want your large language model to be self-critic. So what helps as well is that when you get the feedback, you ask the prompt, review your own work. And I could really recommend to do that. If you have a more complex thing and you get a nice report out of it, to 2 or 3 times ask the model, review your own work and give improvements, because what it then does, it once again formulates what it has done to come up with a result. For example, to assemble the state of the art in heart failure. And then when you put the prompt, review how you the advocacy of the state of the art of heart failure, it will review its own work. It will go back to the base data, and then it will say, well, I noticed that I've done this and this not right. I noticed that this and this could be better. And I think these improvements will make the report better. And usually it's said that if you do that 2 or 3 times, the output is significantly improving. And that's then the output that you still have to read and that you still have to validate. And you definitely need to check, and that's the next slide, the content of the output, because still models make mistakes. Still they come up with references that don't exist, information that don't exist. Sometimes because there is bias in the system, they make conclusions that are not okay. So definitely into medical topics, it's important that you need to check every source that is mentioned. And for those of you that are experienced, you may remember that 2 years ago, when you would ask a reference list, sometimes I had the experience that 5 of the 10 references didn't even exist. It just came up and you enter the reference and it was a 404 bad error. To be honest, if I now use Google Gemini, it comes up with much better result. I hardly ever have references that do not exist, but I still check all of them. And sometimes also, of course, there are missing references and you need to ask the system a couple of times, do the check again and come up with all literature relevant for this topic. General medical advice for individual patients is at the moment still not recommended. So if you want to make a medical advice or generate advice, then it's better to have general educational information and not specific for individual patients. You need to check for inclusivity. This is also an interesting topic in the evolution of large language models, because there is a bias, for example, because females are less included in clinical trials, that when you use all these information into large language model, the output is biased as well. But the output that is generated by large language models is uploaded again into the internet, and there causes an additional bias because, well, with biased information, new information is uploaded, and it makes, well, the database even more biased. And this is a topic where quite a number of scientists are currently doing a lot of research on to think on how to prevent this in the future and, well, try to get an inclusive data set as well. So bias, safety, and of course, a very important element, maybe not specifically mentioned here, never ever add patient data within the open large language models, because these data go into the open environment and they theoretically can be tracked or can pop up in somebody else's searches. I have not mentioned in the beginning when explaining the models that apart from open source or open available models, there are models that you can run in your own environment. Llama from Meta is such a model. You can download that into your own laptop environment and you can use it to analyze only your own data. This is called Reg AI, and Reg AI is something that within hospital environments now is being developed very fastly, but also in community pharmacy environments. I can imagine that, for example, community change by their own large language models and allow that on a specific environment. You can do medication verification, or you can do interaction checking on patient data because it's in a safe environment that is not uploaded in the internet. But if you use ChatGPT or Google Gemini, never ever use any traceable patient, but also, of course, other individual information. That brings me to one more demo prompt. But before that, let's quickly summarize what we never should do, which are the 7 deadly sins of prompting. Avoid being vague. Never ever forget the context. Ignoring the format is quite a sin. Being happy when you get your first output is maybe not a good idea, and make the large language model self-critic and ask for more outputs. Never give in any restrictions. So, for example, number of wording or tone, or it's not a good idea. Forget verification and bias, and check the input or the output is a deadly sin. And well, that's to a certain extent the same as the last part. You should never rely on the output because it's not consistent. It is a bad guess. You're the expert, and before bringing it out in the world, you need to check every output and keep the human in the loop, as they call it. And we already said a couple of times, we spoke about hallucinations. Hallucinations is a critical concern because in our world, if a model does not give the right output, it may have very serious consequences, which could be an incorrect drug information, clinical guidelines, which never ever have existed anywhere. It can be overgeneralized information, which is not representing the factual situation, inconsistent drug interactions. So hallucinations should be avoided at all case. Because of the time, I will skip the hallucination part. I see that some people already have entered it, which is very funny. If you look at the generation level, the hallucination level, it's quite interesting to see what happened between April 2025 and this is October 2025. First of all, you see that the models have improved, and some other models are now better than they were, or worse than they were in April. But you also see that the general hallucination rate has slightly improved. It's for some models still 2%, and well, basically here they become only slightly better. It's 0.6%. But there is a very important constraint here, because the factual accuracy for medical information, the hallucination rate in that case may be even much higher. So this is not a hallucination rate that you immediately can translate into the medical environment. But if you use models for general purposes, you can see that provided that you use the right prompting, you might get an output that has a very low mistake rate. And Vectara comes up every 2 months with a new review of models. Humans in the loop, we already said. Well, if you do prompting in pharmacy, there are different domains where you can use it. Medical information generation. You can use it to develop staff trainings. I do that quite often. Educational content in very interactive ways, different interactive ways. It comes up with really good learning programs. You can use it for literature search, and there are models like, or products, I have to say, like Evidence Hunt, where you can do literature search and it really comes out with a good overview of the relevant literature on a certain topic. You can do interaction checks, but keep in mind, you are the one that has to sign off that the information really is suitable. Education material, which is to a certain extent training as well, and documentation. Basically, as I said, then it's a matter of trying. And if you want to, well, start in a funny way, oh, I'm sorry. These are a couple of prompts that are just funny to try and well, get going. But then if you want to become more professional, then keep in mind that there are all kinds of prompt libraries the in the free available web information. And I was going to show you one example. It's this one. No, it's not this one. Hey, it's this one. This is an interesting um, prompt library. And if you have this create a medication therapy management plan for a patient, this is a very complex prompt. Well, let's do that quickly as a last part of this training. I click for this prompt. It's no. Well, I do it here. I put the content in ChatGPT, and probably it's going to ask me something because I didn't. You're an expert level pharmacist, but I would. Oh, I see that it's in Dutch. I'm sorry, but it's now asking. Tell me the patient profile, the current medication. What is the goal of the medication management plan? Which is the context of healthcare, and what would you want as an output? Well, I already put a patient in here, so I'll put that in the slide. I will give the output in English. Output in English. And now it is making a medication management plan for a female of 68 years old with this disease. It gives indication, it gives current comments, certain issues, problem identification. How can we optimize the therapy? What can you do? What could be a monitoring plan, as you can see, and then a patient education plan. And this is the first part. Afterwards, you could say, make a Word document with help and education for the patient to deal with the information above. For now, we don't have the time to deep dive into the details, but why I wanted to show you this, it makes life easier because you have a basis to start from, and you can start reviewing now. You need to check everything, but you don't have to develop all the thinking yourself. And this database has a lot of these type of prompts. So a drug interaction report, a medication, a drug shortage report, it just can help you. And that brings me to the end of this presentation. Just a moment. If you want to learn more, you can also find prompting guides and resources in Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, plot specific. Well, all of the big large language models have free prompting guides. And if you go on YouTube, you will find quite some quite good examples of trainings of prompting. And for example, the medical futurist has prompting for healthcare professionals, which goes maybe a bit further than this presentation, a bit has even a further deep dive, but that's quite helpful as well. The summary, well, clarity, context, role, output, constraints, iteration, and safety is important. And never forget that you're briefing a smart intern, that the context is important, the structure matters, and always continue to think critically, which we are as a pharmacist. So I think we could be the best prompt engineers in the world. And that's what I want to share with you. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia. That was fantastic and very practical advice that can be used in everyday pharmacy. I know we're at the top of time, so I know some people may have to leave, but we will hang on here for just a few more minutes to answer some of the questions. I know we've got quite a few questions, and I know a lot of the questions are around. Some of these are specific to, how do you apply this and for in templates. So I think the resources you shared, linking to prompt templates, will address some of those. But I guess just to start for one of the questions, we had a few questions around educational and ethical side of prompting. And so how do you teach students to use this responsibly? So for instance, how do we integrate AI literacy and prompt design into pharmacy curricula while ensuring learners don't over rely on it? And then ethically, what are the boundaries pharmacists should observe when interpreting or applying AI generated recommendations?
Do you want me to give an answer? But Whitley, I'm pretty sure that you have a feeling about this as well. So maybe you want to
Well, yeah, no,
start
if you
answering.
want to kick it off and then I can join in.
Okay.
I'm happy to chime in.
Yeah, it's a very good question, a very relevant question where I know that quite some universities are also working on guidelines how students are allowed to use large language model within their education. I do think that the most important thing is that you train students to continue to think critically. I think we should be realistic that as long as we have energy supply, etc., those models will not go away. Students will use them, and pharmacists will use them, but they will not replace us. The better we use it, the better pharmacists we can be. And that's a paradigm that many students and universities, I'm sorry, are giving guidance to the students. Use it, but try to use it in your own favor and never stop thinking critically. And I do have own experience that sometimes students say, I'm not going to use the large language model because it makes me dumber if I ask it only the things that I need to have in my brain when I'm speaking to a patient. So you see that there is a sort of balance that slowly evolves that well shows that students are getting or realizing that they can use it for efficiency reasons, but they should never use it to not or that they should always be aware to be as critical and well to creative as well themselves. But we are in a perfect storm, I have to say, because it's not crystallized how the collaboration between those type of models and medical professionals ultimately will be. It's evolving.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of a new era here, and ultimately we have to learn how to use these tools effectively. So it's not that they're going to replace our ability to, think clinically, but we need to know how do we leverage them in the right way. Just like any other, sometimes I think analogous to like initially when um we had different like spell check software come onto the market and previously like you would have to be able to that was considered cheating essentially. And so I think these tools are just going to become an integral part of what we do, but realizing that just like with any other like clinical drug support, you also have to be able to answer questions in real time. When you have a patient in front of you and you're not going to have an AI tool sitting right there being able to answer for you. So you have to be able to balance with what do you need to be able to recall versus how can you use these tools to help like to help improve efficiency in some ways, like to help summarize things, organize your notes into a table, make flashcards for you. There's a lot of other ways that can be used without replacing, I think, clinical judgment. One of the other questions we had was around ethical boundaries and how should we observe the boundaries when using AI generated recommendations for individualized therapy. And I think that comes back, and I'll like you answer this, Claudia, too. I think that one comes back to um, again, we can't rely on these models to be accurate. And if you're applying this to individualized therapy, you are the ultimate stopgap measure in assuring that you have ultimate, clinical liability here and making sure that what you do here is ethical and accurate, and you can't rely, you can't just say, oh well, the LLM told me, or this was the answer it gave me. Ultimately, it's up to you to verify the accuracy of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Human in the loop, professional in the loop is important. And I think I could add to that the transparency element. You see now in marketing and advertisement, you see that if they use a AI generated avatar or personality, there is a small, in small capitals, it said, this is an AI generated image. You also see when you speak to a chatbot, it said, this is not a human, it's a chatbot. I tend to believe that if you are going to use models within pharmacy that generate patient materials, for example, yeah, you need to check it, but you can also add the transparency that the information is made efficiently available with help of an AI. And that helps sometimes for patients to have the feeling, okay, they're using technology, but at least they're open and transparent about it. And then last but not least, never ever use patient data. I mean, one of the most unethical part is to make sure that you secure the privacy of patients to the utmost and that you're transparent about that and communicate it also that you are using models, but that you as a professional always are responsible and also give all the efforts to secure the privacy of the patient.
Yes, I completely agree. We also had a few questions about cultural sensitivity and using LLMs in other languages. And so this might be good for you to address, Claudia, but are there LLMs that are trained in other languages to begin with and that are more accurate or ones that are better for translation? And then if you are creating patient materials, what are techniques to make sure that it's, culturally sensitive and appropriate?
There are large language models that are specific made for translation. An example is DeepL, DEEPL. But there are other ones. I'm not sure if there are religion or cultural specific large language models in a broad sense. I know that there are regional initiatives, but you could make your own large language to a certain model, a certain extent culturally sensitive by putting it in the memory and adding I'm asking questions in the context of a certain population and provide the output always with the context in mind. So you could train your own model on this context, and in some regions in the world there will definitely be products available that are trained on specific religions or specific culture or specific languages, but I cannot give a clear example now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll probably see more things in the future that are fine-tuned or specific to certain, contexts or cultures. In the meantime, one technique that you could potentially use that I've also used in the past is like if you're, creating something for a specific patient in mind, if you do create kind of a psychographic profile, right, around what are the preferences, belief, values this individual, and then ask the LM to tailor it based on that profile, that is one strategy to build it into the prompt itself. But it's, slightly different than trying to use something that's already like fine-tuned for that. And I know we still have quite a few questions, and I wish we could get to all of them, but maybe we will just end on this one last question here. How do you envision AI transforming the way that pharmacists educate and communicate with patients over the next 5 years?
Ah, that's a very good question. Over the next year or the next 5 years, it's evolving so fast that many experts in the field say we can't even envision what's happening in 5 years because it's faster. The evolvement is faster than tools how they developed in the previous decades. Nevertheless, what I like is a saying of also the medical futurist, but then with doctors. I don't think that AI replaces doctors, but doctors that don't work with AI will be less well suited doctors. The same is applicable to pharmacists, and in many areas in the world, personal shortage is a problem. We are in many areas of the world there is an aging situation, and people need more care, but there are less people that can take care of them. And there, I think that the synergy between these type of models that create a certain efficiency in combination with the contextual knowledge and the human professional awareness of the pharmacist, if that is well combined, there is a higher likelihood that we solve this aging and resource problem. So that would be my evolution. And that's also where I see that universities are thinking on how to train pharmacists of the future in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's accelerating so fast it's hard to predict exactly where we'll be in 5 years. But I think some exciting things is just the ability um, to customize and personalize information and do that at scale that we've never really had before. And so when we think specifically about patient education, I think about the ability to actually tailor everything to an individual's learning style and preferences instead of just, mass producing content. It can all be structured and tailored to the way that it, is going to be digestible at the individual level. And I think that we'll see a lot of augmentation of AI helping support communication and being that in between, as well as, being able to, as it gets more and more reliable, to be able to be kind of one of those you know, first line tools for like quick questions, right, around drug information or triage or next steps, or where do what do you need to go if you see this sign or symptom. So I foresee us leveraging that a lot more. And you already see patients utilizing these tools for those kind of questions already. And so I think it's important that we are part of validating it and making sure that these resources are used appropriately by patients as well.
Can I make one additional comment?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
as a last comment, maybe, I see one thing that we didn't mention in the training, and which is an important development, is that we move more from reactive to more preventative care. So it allows us the data analysis and the access to screening, mining the data, and analyzing patterns makes also the pharmacist probably a person that moves more into preventing interactions and preventing side effects, because we know more from the patient, because the patient is maybe willing to share data from wearables with us, which we then combine with the pharmacy data, and then we can add services where we say, well, I think that we should lower the dose because we see in practice that this ends up most of the times within side effect X or Y, and we want to prevent it. And I think that's a very interesting role where pharmacists earlier in the process can have a value for a patient by better forecasting what a potential drug effect might be. Definitely, if you also take into account pharmacogenomics data that we may have access to.
Yes, that's a good call. And we did have a question around that. It's like, do we see LLMs or AI being used to leverage interpretation of pharmacogenomic data for this? So I think,
Yeah.
as we get access to more and more data, AI is going to help us leverage that and be able to make higher level decisions essentially in terms of pharmaceutical care.
Support
Yes.
high level decisions.
Yes, support high level decisions. Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone so much for attending. Just as a reminder, you can view the recording for the digital event. It'll be made available at events.fip.org. And please, send any feedback to webinars@fip.org so we can always continue to improve our digital events offerings. And just a reminder to join us in Montreal next year for another wonderful pharmacy conference. Awesome. Thank you all so much for attending and have a wonderful day. And thank you, Claudia, so much for a fantastic presentation.
Thank you for the organization, and thanks everyone for the great questions and the attendance, and good luck with practicing.